Striped Life Officials Podcast with Jeff Landers.
Hello and welcome into the Striped Life Officials Podcast. I am Jeff Landers. Today, basketball camp recap. So you football officials, sorry, this one might not be for you. Basketball officials, this one is for you. We had the Idaho District 6 basketball camp just recently, and I wanted to go over a few of the things I learned, a few of the things I got out of that camp. Definitely going into my fifth year can always pick up more things to better our game, and that's what I went up with the intentions. And we had one camper who asked me if I was going to be doing football this weekend because he was kind of skipping out on camp to go do a football game. And he said to me, well, I could use that $125. And I sure could use that $125 as well. But I committed to basketball camp. And when I make that commitment to basketball camp, I want to be here at basketball camp. And I'm not quite sure that camper specifically got that message, but I committed to basketball camp. I was there and I wanted to learn is the point. So when you're there, I'll talk about being present. That's where I was going. Be present. Be with your feet. Now we'll talk a little bit about that later in the show. And maybe talking a little bit about eliminating the negative self-talk is what we'll talk about later on the show. But one of the first things at this particular camp, we've had it at the same location for the last, I don't know how many years, every year I've gone there. But there's a quote in the meeting room in which we congregate for the first thing in the morning, Fridays and Saturdays. And that quote says, "That which we persist in doing becomes easier, not that the nature of the task has changed, but our ability to do so has increased." And that quote is by Ralph Waldo Emerson. And it's hanging right above where the speakers talk to our association for this camp. And it's exactly why we're there to do camp. That which we persist in doing becomes easier, not that the nature of the task has changed, but our ability to do so has increased. We are there to increase our ability. That's why we go to camp. That's why I'm doing this podcast, is to help spread my journey. Maybe you guys can pick up a thing or two just from what I learned through this process, through this journey. And that, again, was hanging above the whiteboard where the guest speakers were lecturing us at the camp. That which we persist in doing becomes easier, not that the nature of the task has changed, but our ability to do so has increased. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Now at this camp, it's our high school association. So again, NFHS referee, not Division I, nowhere near the NBA, NFL, NFHS. That's what I do. That's who I am. That's what I've been doing over the last 5 years. So the clinicians that they had brought in, and shout out to Steve Belknap and James Bolin, who put this camp on. Just getting everything organized takes a lot of work. But they brought in some clinicians for us. Rick Thorne is a Division I referee, and I didn't get a lot of time with Rick. I never really had a game where he was the clinician on that court. So the premise of his message to the campers was enjoy the journey. There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs. You have to enjoy it all. It's a basketball game. Enjoy it. It's a part of your life. Make sure, if it's going to be a part of your life, enjoy it. It's a basketball game. Enjoy the ups and downs. They had Ashley Ellis come in, who is a Division I women's referee and going into the Pac-12. So she is going to a Power 5 conference as a referee, and she's a fantastic speaker. I believe that she's a teacher somewhere in the state of Utah. I forget the high school or the elementary school, but she is a teacher when you get to know her because she's instructional on the court. Last year, she helped me with standing up straight, keeping my posture back as I tend to slouch over. That's one of the things I do. Also, drop my whistle. She quite frankly told me, stop using your whistle as a binky. You're like a child with a pacifier with that whistle. Drop it. So thus went to gum. I had to start chewing gum so that I would naturally drop the whistle and just chew on the gum. This year, the best thing she gave me was keeping my shoulders square when I'm at sea. And I have some diagrams later on that I can get to, and I will bring that up. But keeping my shoulders square when I'm at sea, because If the ball goes down into the corner for a 3-point and I'm the center, I would turn my whole body and square because that's just what felt natural to me. But she said, no, keep your shoulders square to the sideline and just look. So if you're a center out there and you do what I do, don't square up. Just keep your shoulders square to the sideline as the shot goes up. Keep your shoulders square and just look. It was a huge tip that I had no idea that I was doing in my own personal game. And if you like how far we've gotten into this, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. That helps us out a ton. Subscribe if you're listening to the audio version. Subscribe Spotify, Google Pods, wherever you may be listening. Please do us a favor and hit that subscribe button so we can get to you each and every week when we have new content. And finally, the keynote, as I continue to hit my microphone here, the keynote speaker of this camp was Tiffany Bird, a Division I referee, a WNBA referee. She's from our area, very good friends with the people who organized this. And she's a bulldog. She really is a bulldog with how seriously she takes basketball and officiating. And I commend her on that. And she was giving a tip to one of our female referees, and she was kind of very serious, very in her face. And I like that. And it wasn't bad. It was not bad. It was good. She was giving her tips, do this, not this, and very serious is the way I would describe her. And she gave us 4 fundamentals. In her keynote address Saturday morning, she gave us 4 fundamentals. And she said that she had this written on a note card and she took it in her bag everywhere she went. Tip number 1, work hard in your primary. It seems kind of obvious to veteran officials, work hard in your primary. Your newer officials, if you can put a wall up in your primary area, around your primary area, put that wall up around your primary area. That's all you have to officiate. The other crewmates are in their areas. You can, of course, have the corner of your eye checking out if you're not very active in your area. But if you're very active in your area, work hard in that area. Now, for you newbies, I do have a graphic for you. Here are the diagrams 414 and 519 out of the NFHS Officials Manual. The bottom half, the 2-man mechanic, is your diagram 414. And the red is where you would be trail, and the beige is where you would be the lead. Now, in 3-man mechanics, which is the upper half, that's diagram 519, your trail is in blue, your lead is in red, and your C is in that tan beige color. So those are your primaries. If you can work hard in your primary area, the game will be much easier to officiate. I've noticed it myself in my few years doing this. Work hard in your primary, pick up the 2 or 3 defenders that are in your primary, and that's how you're going to officiate. The game becomes much easier because now you're not worrying about 10 players, you're worrying about 3. So that, again, microphone in the way as I keep hitting it. Worry about 3. Tip number 2, if I could get my mouse under control here to put this up. Tip number 2, referee the defense. And I just alluded to that. If we are watching the defense, and what Tiffany Bird, WNBA referee, said to us in this clinic, the rule book is basically the allowance for the defense. This is what the defense can and cannot do. Yes, there are some violations by the offense that are written in, but if you primarily read the rule book as an allowance of what the defense can and cannot do. That's what the rule book is explicit in, what the defense can and cannot do. So we referee the defense. We work hard in our primary. We referee the defense. Again, so we're going from 10 players. If we're watching the whole court, which we should not be, that's 10 players. We can cut that into half if we just referee the defense. So now we're 5. And now we take 2 or 3 of the players that are not in our primary area, and we're only watching 2 or 3 players for fouls. That makes the game so much easier when I don't need to worry about players X, Y, and Z because they're up top. I'm the lead. they're out of my area. And this really is for me in transition, a transition exercise. When I'm going from trail to new lead, transitioning from watching 5 players in white jerseys to 5 players in blue jerseys. Okay, I've got 5 white jerseys. Bam. Now I've got 5 blue jerseys. Oh, I don't need 2 of those players. They're not in my area as I'm working my way up the court. So work hard in your primary, referee the defense. Now, as I can bring up tip number 3, call the obvious. If we only called the obvious, our call percentage would be 100% accurate. Think about it. I'm only going to call what I know is a foul. Call the obvious. When you start getting into those 50-50 calls, your call percentage is going to be going down. And I'm not even a great person to be talking about call percentage because I know my call percentage isn't that high. And I'd really like to see a statistic, if anybody followed me throughout the season, what my call percentage really is, because that would help me get better. But call the obvious. That was a foul. That was a foul. In football, I had he's in our basketball association as well, but I had a guy who's a little bit older than me and been in the game a little bit longer, the officiating game a little bit longer. And he goes, I don't want you throwing the flag unless you go, oh shit, that's a foul. Or a penalty in football terms, but oh shit, that's a penalty. Then throw the flag. Kind of what we're talking about in number 3 here. Call the obvious. Number 1, work hard in the primary. Number 2, referee the defense. Number 3, call the obvious, and our call percentage will go way up. Now, number 4, don't guess. Very similar to number 3, but be sure, don't guess. I think I saw a hand on the arm. Don't blow. If you don't know, don't blow the whistle. If you're going to blow the whistle, know what the call is. Don't guess. Be sure. And then you have a justification to tell the coach when the coach comes and asks you rightfully. So don't guess. Tiffany Bird's 4 keys to success that she shared with us at the District 6 basketball camp. And, you know, they may seem obvious, but if we really work hard in our primary, work hard at refereeing the defense, work hard to call the obvious, and work hard to be sure, we're going to be in pretty good shape when we get out there on the court. Now, I do have one thing that I kind of disagreed with her, but it's just more of a personal philosophy, and it's not that big of a deal either. But before I tell you that, if you've been following us, you may have seen we have an episode with Blair Peepo on conflict resolution, as I get my words correct. So go ahead and check us out on YouTube, Spotify, Audible, Google Pods, Amazon. Blair Peepo and I gave you our summer reading list. So click on over to that after you're done listening to this one. Conflict resolution, which is a great topic for us officials. How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie is one of Blair's top books. And Don't Bullshit Yourself by John Taffer. And, of course, The Art of War by Sun Tzu. Now, a few of my recommendations were Verbal Judo by George J. Thompson and Boundaries, When to Say Yes, When to Say No by Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend. So go on and click on over to that episode after you're done here. A great episode with Blair. Blair's a great person to really work with and to just ride in a car with. I've done that a few times on the way home from games. Just a fantastic person all around. And great on the court, on the football field, basketball court, and just as a person as well. Okay, the one thing that I really didn't agree with Tiffany Bird is she said that when she was coming up the ranks, people would call her to go do rec league games. And she would do 2. They would ask her to do 4, and she goes, no, I'll do 2. And her reasoning was, and perfectly justifiable, I don't want my mechanics to get sloppy and lazy because by the time we get to games 3 and 4, we're tired. That's when we start to let the laziness slip in. The mechanics don't get as crisp. Perfectly understand that. For me, I say, as part of our association here where we are, there's 100% chance during the season, maybe even once a week, I get asked to go do 3 games in a row to do a JV boys, a varsity girls, and then a varsity boys, all back to back to back at the same school. So if I don't do 3 games in a row during the summer and stretch my limits a little bit, I don't know if I'll be able to do it that well during the season. I want to stretch my limits. I want to do 4, 5, 6 games a night if I can. Stretch my limits, because by the time you do get to games 3, 4, 5, you are tired. But if you're intentional on the court, and this goes for the football field as well, if you're doing extra games, if you're intentional about keeping your mind in the game, keeping your mechanics crisp, keeping your energy up, and your call selection good, be intentional in those late games. Even though you're dog tired, you're going to be able to stretch. It's like lifting weights. You'll be able to stretch your limits just like a lifter will. So that's just the one thing I disagreed with her on. I'm going to go ahead and do 4, 5, 6 games a night and be intentional. And if you listen to the audio episode that I put out, episode number 1, I talked to one of our members, Chris, about that during Memorial Day tournament. And we're dog tired on games 4, 5, 6. And we talked about being intentional. So if you go out and be intentional with your acts in those late days, you'll be able to stretch your limits. Again, small thing. But she's the one in the WNBA. I'm the one doing high school. So if you want to take her advice, please do. But from my perspective, small thing that I just kind of disagreed with. And then earlier this week, to go with that, what I was talking about earlier this week, I was listening to an episode of the Ed Milet Show. And he had a guest on named Alan Stein Jr., who worked with NBA players, and he tells a story about meeting Kobe Bryant and how Kobe said, "Yeah, you can come see me practice, be there at 4 a.m. And the guy's like, "Okay, all right, I'll be right there, and I'm going to be early, and I'm going to be there." And I showed up about 5-10 minutes early to Kobe's practice, and he's already been in the gym for half an hour warming up before his practice at 4 a.m. And he goes on to say how most guys during the summer in the NBA, most players are doing 2 workouts a day. Kobe did 3. But in order to fit 3 in, he had to start at 3 a.m. And if Kobe was always doing 1 more practice than everyone else, he was going to be exponentially better because they could never catch him. And that was Alan Stein Jr.'s story on the Ed Milet Show. And I think it relates a lot to what we do. If we can do 1 or 2 more games and stretch our limits and be intentional about keeping our head in the game, will be much easier during the winter when I get called to do 3 games in a row, probably once a week, given the shortage of referees around the country. So again, just a small thing that I disagreed with Tiffany on. Now, tips. I first heard, and I wanted to talk about this, but I first heard this phrase years ago when I was working at the TV station here, and I was listening to a press conference by then Boise State football coach Brian Harsin. I was trying to pick out the sound bites, and it was almost the perfect one. Is be present, be with your feet. And what he meant, if you're in class, be in class. If you're on the practice field, be on the practice field. If you're in the weight room, be in the weight room. If you're taking a walk to get away from everywhere, take a walk to get away from everywhere. If you're spending time with your family and friends, be with them. Be present, be in the moment. Don't be in your mind thinking about other things. And we as officials, we blow a call, it's a bad call. We can be stuck in that moment and not moving on to the next one. And I think if you can just hear, yourself, tell yourself, hey, move on to the next play. Be present in the next play. And I always think that if I were a coach, I'd be telling my players after a botched play or a missed call by a referee, because yes, it does happen. We miss calls. That if I were a coach, I'd be demanding of my players, just move on. Just move on. Win this next play. Go get the ball if we're going to defense. Get the bucket if we're not going on to offense. Concentrate on the next play. Just move on. Forget about what just happened. We as referees need to do that as well. And how cool would it be if a coach ever, came up to one of us, but hey, I know you missed that one. Just get the next one. Just get the next one right. So let's be with our minds. And then also eliminate the negative self-talk. A lot of times during the season, I'm sitting there talking, this guy's legal, not a lot going on over here. This guy, he's been in the paint. Let's get out of the paint. You speak up and you tell it to him. But you're talking to yourself as you're officiating. Don't let the negativity creep in. Keep that self-talk positive. Keep it focused on the game. And yes, we are going to look back to review. We should learn, but then we're going to let it go. Let go of, I missed the call, the negativity. Let go of that negativity. And then I got to go back for a little bit. So those are my couple of mindful tips, but I got to go back because I do have a couple of slides here that I want to show. This is what I got from Tiffany, which this is basketball, master's class from her. And she told us for this camp, we want you to, when you're going from trail to new lead on a transition, don't go to close down unless that ball is in the opposite third. And let me show you something here. Don't go straight to close down as new lead right there unless the ball is in that opposite third of the court from you. So if you're on the right side of this court, right where that arrow is, for the people who are listening, I'm looking at a basketball court top to bottom on my screen. Trail was on the right side, and he's moving to the bottom of your screen. And he straight to the close down position at the paint. That's because the ball is coming up the court on the opposite third. Now, if the ball is anywhere else in the middle of the court or on your side of the court, stay wide. Stay wide. Excellent, excellent advice. And I found myself implementing this throughout the weekend, and it felt so much more natural because you think back to some of my games, and I think back where, I did on a transition play, I ran straight to close down because that was just habit. That was the habit I did. But here, stay wide if the ball's anywhere else, and then stay wide while you're officiating. If the ball goes over to the other side, get to close down, and then if it settles, go. Make your transition as a three-man crew. You would make your rotation. So if the ball is anywhere in the 2/3 of this court, and you're the new lead coming from trail, stay wide. Going back to the other slide, if the ball's on the opposite third of the court, go to close down, and then get out wide if the ball comes back your way. Or if the ball goes into the corner from there, you can make your rotation. Found myself working on that a lot this weekend for camp. And another thing is, if for those of you who are watching, look at this diagram. Keep your shoulders square. Imagine you're the center referee right at the foul line extended. So your shoulders are going to be parallel with the sideline and perpendicular to the free throw line. And just look into the corner when the ball goes there. You don't have to square up like I was doing. So those are the two other big tips from Tiffany that we worked on at camp. But it's almost the end of June. Football season is around the corner. And if you guys are football officials and basketball officials, concussions do happen for us as well. But if you're a football official, concussions happen more and more on the gridiron than they do on the basketball court. I do have an episode on concussions. You can find that again on YouTube, Google Pods, Spotify, Audible, and you can find us on Instagram as well at Striped Life Officials. And if you have any comments, questions, or anything that you'd like to discuss with me, you can email us here at stripedlifepod@gmail.com for comments, questions, show topics. For those watching, that's at the bottom of your screen. For those listening, striped STRIPED, lifepod@gmail.com for any questions, comments, show topics you'd like to talk about. And again, like and subscribe for us if you enjoyed this episode. It would mean a lot to us as we get things going. And Striped Life Officials is a production of JKI Performance. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have a great weekend. It is going to be just about 4th of July by the time this comes out. So hope you enjoy your holiday. And I will catch you again. This is Striped Life Officials.
Thank you for listening to Striped Life Officials. Go slow.